It's a necessity for companies, and we offer a low effort and efficient way to gather all this information.
Mike, welcome. We appreciate you making some time for us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So before we get into what your solution actually is, can you explain the problem in clean hydrogen that needs to be addressed?
Absolutely, I can do so. I need to elaborate a little bit on this one, but the overall focus on why hydrogen is so important really comes down to tackling climate change in the general sense. So essentially, it's just one piece of the puzzle to reduce carbon emissions. And how do we achieve this? Well, it's kind of a way to transport energy. But why is that important? So currently, the European Union, for example, has established regulations such as the European Green Deal, ambitiously trying to reduce carbon emissions Europe-wide. They want to be carbon neutral, I believe it's by 2050 or so. Germany kind of followed this trend, tried to be a little bit faster with carbon neutrality by 2045. And just as a means to get to this drastic amount of reduction and transforming the entire industry, basically, you need to take a look at alternative energy sources, which are just cleaner than the fossil fuels we're currently using. Yeah, renewable energies are one of the key components, the key enablers here. We have solar power, wind power, geothermal power, and while they offer great benefits, they come with a couple of downsides. So usually they are regionally located at areas where there's just more sun, in the desert, where there's more wind close to the shoreline. But this does not really meet with the demand of the high energy intensive industry, which is usually hundreds or thousands of kilometers away. So the issue arises not only how to transport the green power that you've already acquired, but it's also how do you cover these peak hours? So solar power is only achievable or most efficient during daytimes, obviously, but the industry is going to work 24/7. So how do you manage these peaks where you maybe have some excess energy, and at the same time, how do you manage these lows during nighttime, and how can you compensate for this, basically? This is exactly where hydrogen comes into play. It's just a clean chemical compound. It's the H2 molecule. During incineration, you will have the oxidization of this H2 compound. It releases energy and vaporizes into water vapor, basically. So it's a very clean process, and therefore offers a way to transport high amounts of energy. You have derivatives, for example, like ammonium, which don't have the drawbacks of the high flammability and the safety precautions when you change everything. But overall, that's the main goal of transferring energy from these renewable energy plants up to the point where it's needed. And when we take a look at Germany, for example, you will see that our sustainability or renewable energy production is still kind of increasing, but we will never reach the amounts of renewable energy that we would need to really feed our industry. So in Germany, there's 70% of the entire hydrogen which is going to be needed by 2030 is coming from imports, basically. So this is a very interesting point, and this raises the question, where do we get our hydrogen from, and what type of hydrogen do we want? And to drill down just a little bit further is the question, well, what is hydrogen equal to other hydrogen molecules? It's just a molecule, right? And it's in the incineration process is very clean. But the answer here is that you will have to take a look at the cradle to grave balancing, basically from the primal power production up until the consumption, to really assess the carbon footprint. And this is where different colors of hydrogen come into play. So what the European regulation is going after is the green hydrogen. It's a matter of definition. It just comes from a process called electrolysis. Basically, you need sustainable, renewable energy from solar power, geothermal power, that kind of stuff. And you put it into the electrolyzing unit, which basically splits up water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. This is a very clean process, a rather clean process. It's kind of misleading because it does not have a carbon footprint of 0. And this is why a lot of scientists are currently working on changing more towards a product passport and a carbon footprint type of thing, rather than talking in colors. But this is really what you want. And for example, in France, they will also label nuclear power as green power. So therefore, if you have an electrolyzing unit, which draws its power from a nuclear power in France, this facility is going to produce green hydrogen. But in Germany, this would not count as green hydrogen because we do not acknowledge nuclear power as green power. So therefore, you can see it gets kind of complicated. And especially when we take a look at how are we going to cover our demand of our high demand of hydrogen for our steel industry, the ceramics industry, everything related to heat or power, basically, we're going to have to ask the question, what type of hydrogen are we really getting right now? And this is why it is very important to have solutions such as Green Search to take a look at where does my hydrogen really come from?
Well, I love the fact that not only are you tackling the carbon issue, but also the pollutants because it's so clean when you actually burn the hydrogen. But I want to dive into those solutions. So how is Fraunhofer leveraging Hedera to address some of these issues that you just covered?
Well, we came up with a basically a initial concept of a proof of origin solution. And I'm just going to show you the mock-up. This is no running solution just yet. It's just a concept. We came up with a solution that basically gathers information across the entire supply chain from your power producer, from your hydrogen producer, up to the consumers or maybe wholesalers in between. And not only draws together all this information, but it also combines it at the right moments of time and distributes it across the DLT, creating a chain of custody, a proof of origin, which is subsequently handed over through all these steps. What I'm going to show you is that the final result first, and afterwards I'm going to just jump into how the solution works, and it's basically set up. So this is the landing page you're seeing right now. On the left-hand side, you can enter a process ID. This is usually a number which we are going to attach to a invoice, which refers to a certain amount of hydrogen you're going to buy. At the same time, you could also elaborate on the fact that you will have a QR code on individual gas vessels, which directly lead you towards the information reliant or you require for the individual gas vessel. So let's just jump right into if you just bought 1 ton of hydrogen from some company, you can type in the process ID you received during the invoice, and you can retrieve the proof of origin to take a look at what you really bought. And this is going to take you to a short interface where you can see the general information of the entire sale, who was the producer, when did you get it, what types of batches are included. And the beauty of this is you can take a look at the individual batches, the individual gas vessels, and see the details of where this vessel has come from. So if I click on an individual vessel, it's going to send me to this view where you basically are having the entire overview of the chain of custody. So you will have the overview of where did your hydrogen come from, what type of mixture is this? Is this basically just green hydrogen, or is there also a mixture of yellow hydrogen when the sustainable power was not enough? So you had to draw some power from the national grid as well. You will have the attached files of safety documentation and that kind of stuff. You will have the overview of the product data sheet, the purity, secondary compounds, that kind of stuff. But really the heart of the solution is, and this is what you're going to really want in a solution like that, the chain of custody, the proof of origin. What steps has this individual gas vessel taken up to the point where you received it? And we did this by basically splitting up the individual stakeholders and process steps. Starting with the power supply, you will have individual token labeled in a 15-minute time frame, gathering all the information that is relevant for these 15 minutes. 15 minutes is, by the way, just the time frame the energy market works on. The prices change every 15 minutes. And this is also the requirement from the regulators that you have a degree of granularity that matches exactly this pulse, so to say. The beauty is that if we can take a look at each individual 15-minute segment, you will have additional information of who is the producer, what is the certificate, is this an authorized production process, is this an authorized plant, when has it been produced and where has it been produced, and you basically get an overview of the entire process. And that's basically the key, the goal that we want to achieve. Usually We talked about this a little bit earlier. We're trying to move away from these color schemes, green and yellow hydrogen, more into a digital product passport, because a lot of the information we're already gathering with the solution is beneficial for other science use cases as well. So yeah, there is more to explore in this regard, but let me just briefly walk you through how we gather this information, and then we can talk about the outlook. So as I mentioned before, we're gathering a lot of information across the supply chain. When we take a look at the supply chain, you start off with green power production, the hydrogen production, maybe some transport in between, wholesale and consumption. The first actor or stakeholder we take a look at was the power producer. So this is the dashboard. Depending on the role you're taking within the system and where you're registered. I just left that out intentionally to not bore you, but this is basically everything the power producer is going to see. So they are able to create an asset. Usually this table is going to be empty, and they can register an power producing asset, such as a wind turbine. You will have to be entering all the information relevant. Who's the grid operator? Where are you basically connected to the grid? What's the capacity, model number? You can attach additional files. What is relevant? Safety documentation, certification, that kind of stuff. And you create an asset, which is subsequently turning here or being highlighted under the My Assets tab. Once you've created everything, you will also see brief performance indicator of your individual assets, so you can basically track the power you're producing. And this is the basis of, well, your contractual agreements with your customers from the power producing side of you. So if there's a hydrogen producer, they are going to have a power purchase agreement with you or some other contractual agreement, and they're going to draw power. This is modeled, and subsequently the other role, jumping to the second stakeholder, is able to draw power from a registered service on GreenCert. Jumping to the power producer side of you, they can basically do the same thing. They can create an asset. They can create either a storage tank where they store the hydrogen, or they can create an electrolyzing unit, both of which are just following the same principle: enter the asset details, attach additional files, and then create an asset. What you're going to receive afterwards is basically a mixture of, I draw my power from power producer A, and I use my electrolyzing unit 1 to fill storage tank 2. And where everything comes together is basically this last view, the processing view, where you see the filling levels of all your individual storage tanks and create new process steps. What we mean by that is that you can either choose to consume hydrogen. For example, if you're selling hydrogen not to a wholesaler, but to a high energy intensive industry stakeholder who's burning it for steel purposes or that kind of stuff, then what's going to happen, the information on the token is going to be burned. The customer is not going to be able to resell the token, and therefore we mitigate the double spending problem. The other option would be the sale of hydrogen, for example, to a wholesaler. They will receive the hydrogen token, and therefore the continue the chain of custody. They will appear in the token as some stakeholder who was in charge of this batch at some point, and they will have the opportunity to keep processing this token and referring it to the final customer eventually. So if we move over through the process, you can enter the date, who's going to receive what amount of hydrogen, what type of hydrogen are you going to cover. You can enter the material number of the individual hydrogen bank or gas vessel which you want to cover. So you have even more granularity, and this is basically the basis of the proof of origin we've just seen. So if I go ahead and click next, I can also enter the product information sheets, the certificate of operation, that kind of stuff. And afterwards, the process step is complete, and it generated a new process ID. This process ID is subsequently attached to an invoice when you're going to sell your hydrogen, and acts as a way to enter the information of the individual batch, leading and closing the circle here to this initial view, where you can either jump right into an individual gas vessel by basically scanning the material number we just matched, or by entering the process ID of the entire batch. And that leads us to the proof of origin view again.
Mike, I am curious. This information is obviously important for all the different stakeholders that you mentioned there, but how does it actually generate revenue? I'm curious how you make this sustainable from a revenue standpoint.
Well, revenue-wise, it depends on who you're going to look at. So The regulator is currently forcing companies to show or to provide more information on their sourcing of fossil fuels or renewable fuels and that kind of stuff. So it's mandatory for all the companies to have an opportunity or to transparently show where their green hydrogen is coming from. So therefore, it's not a matter of revenue, but it's a necessity for companies. And we offer a low effort and efficient way to gather all this information. At the same time, if we take a look, this is for the consumer side, right? This is for the industry that buys hydrogen. What you also achieve is that you have a higher degree of granularity for your sustainability reporting, again, tackling regulatory requirements. But at the same time, you will also address the needs of the stakeholder of the hydrogen producer, for example. They are suddenly capable of proving that the produced hydrogen is sustainable or renewable, as they can refer to a green production process, subsequently leading to a price premium they can ask for it compared to other power producers who are not able to prove that their supply chain is in fact green. So there are a lot of incentives to really take a look at this from a revenue point of view.
All right, understood. So what are some of the next steps, and what's your personal, vision, long-term vision for this project?
So right now, unfortunately, I cannot share any news on how we proceed from the conceptual phase to a development phase. We're currently in talks with Hedera to continue to elaborate on the project and continue to basically realize some of our ideas. There are many opportunities, in my opinion, because this is a very powerful tool, because you're gathering all this information leaves several avenues for further research. So one thing I mentioned earlier is, and this is basically the most important point to me, the digital product passport. I want this information not only to be handed over to a consumer and then this is it, but I want this information to be part of a large ecosystem, the entire value chain, not only the hydrogen production chain, but the information could also be integrated into a digital product passport for green steel, for example. So you can refer the same token, the same information, and just attach it to any product you're making, and you receive way more transparency over the process. This is very beneficial in many other ways. It's basically the goal I want to pursue afterwards.
Well, this is an amazing pilot, as I mentioned. Congratulations on getting to this point, and I appreciate you coming on here and telling us about it.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
I'm now posting these interviews of Hedera builders independently to my channel. The community, influencers, and media outlets are free to use this content to spread the word on what's being built on Hedera. Once they're all uploaded, you'll be able to go to my channel and search for whatever topic or team you're interested in to find more information. Or you'll be able to get the most recent Hedera news by watching the latest HBAR Weekly update. So check them out.